We are the... We are the Unnamed Sunday Assembly Band.
And we want to welcome you to our musical laboratory.
As the philosopher Rudolf Carnap once so clearly said,
Science is a system of statements based on direct experience and controlled by experimental verification.
Or as we say,
Science is real. 1, 2, 1, 2. Science is real. From the Big Bang to DNA. Science is real. From evolution to the Milky Way. I like the stories about angels, unicorns, and elves. Now I like those stories as much as anybody else. But when I'm seeking knowledge, either simple or abstract, the facts are with
Good morning, Sunday Assemblers. I hope all of that has woken you up and that everybody is well caffeinated, if not well rested. Oh, thank you for coming today. We've got our poll on Minty up. If you would like to vote in that, and what year was Sally Ride the first American woman to go into space? We have Zoom Coast happening coming up if you need to make this more accessible to you. And while we're doing that, just going to go on. Why are we here? Why did we get ourselves up this morning on an hour or less of sleep? Well, we are Sunday Assembly. We have our fantastic motto, help often, live better, help often, and wonder more. Live Better, we aim to provide inspiring, thought-provoking, and practical ideas that help people to live the lives they want to lead and be the people that they want to be. Help Often, assemblies, our communities of action building lives of purpose. We're encouraging all to help anyone who needs it and to support each other. We will have some voting later to help with that support. Wonder More is hearing talks. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Kent Wallace today. We're singing as one. At least here we're muted and you didn't have to hear my horrible singing today. But one day soon we will be back together and you will get to hear me. Joy. And we're not here to tell you how to live life. We're here to help be the best version of you that you can be. Sunday Assembly is 100% celebration of life. We were born from nothing. We go back to nothing. No, I won't sing that. Let's enjoy it together. We don't have any doctrine. We have no set text. We can make use of wisdom from all sources. We have no deity. We don't do the supernatural, but we won't tell you wrong if you do. We are radically inclusive. Everyone is welcome, regardless of their beliefs. This is a place of love that is open and accepting. We are free to attend. We're not for profit and volunteer run. We will ask for donations to cover our cost and support our community work. Community mission through our actors and heroes, you will be a force for good. And it's independent. We do not accept sponsorship or promote outside businesses, organizations, or services. We are here to stay. With your involvement, Sunday Assembly will make the world a better place. And we won't tell you how to live, but we will help you do it as well as you can. And remember, point 1, the Sunday Assembly is a celebration of the one life we know we have. And so today our topic is women in STEM, and I was so excited to hear this topic today. I found the poem and I was like, oh, this made me think of those women astronomers that weren't, they were looking at this. So I Google searched because, Google is a wonderful thing. Found the article I was looking for, found 5 articles that sent me down a rabbit hole. One was 8 women astronomers you should know. And I'm looking at this article. Okay, let me check this out first. I'm reading about this person and I go, wait, what? So now I have to Google the word scientist because I thought I knew how the word scientist can be. And the scientist really, we quoted William Well of what science is. And he made the word, he wanted a word which can designate the students of knowledge of the mature world collectively. He proposed scientist as an analog to artist that would provide linguistic unity to those studying the world branches of science. So I had been familiar with that, but I didn't realize that he created the word because he was reviewing the connections of the physical sciences by Mary Somerville's. And there wasn't a word that included women because it was always men of science or men of something. So scientist is a gender neutral term. And the first person that ever got to use it was Mary Somerville. And I'm like, you mean 188 years later, we're still trying to include women in science? And we are, but we will get there eventually. So right now we are going to hear about another woman of science in our poem today. On our Minty poem, our Minty poll, Sally Ride became the first woman in space in 1983, the year after I was born. Yay, at least most of us that participating in the poll knew that answer. We will have another poll about another fascinating woman in science later. And where are we at? So next up is going to be our reading. I love this poem. I hope you enjoy it too. And here is Michelle to read it to you.
At age 28, Chilean astronomer Maritza Soto has already discovered Free Planets by Vincent Toro. Haloed by the glow of the multiverse swirling above La Silla Observatory, your Pyrex eye spotted an orb 3 times the mass of Jupiter. All these lenses layering at the heavens, and yet it was you who identified HD 110014C. You were reluctant to call it discovery, perhaps because you know all too well what poisons gush forth from the word. Or maybe you suspect you are not the first because you know there's no such thing as firsts. Still, you did what no gringo ever could. You made another world visible to nosotros. Perchance it was HD 110014C that actually recognized you long before your spectroscopic lens detected her. It might even be that she had already decided to entrust you with making her presence known to our kind. After all, you proved yourself more than worthy of such responsibility when you said your finding was not exceptional, annihilating the misguided Western patriarchal notion of greatness too many others have used to boost themselves since 1492. You even confessed your introduction to HD 110014C was entirely an accident. A courageous admission that eclipses the bumbling arrogance of every Columbus, every Cortez, every Pizarro. From 300 million light years away, you glimpsed another possibility, then befriended 2 more exoplanets before your 28th year around the Lilliputian sun. You sprung from a country crystallized in its mourning of the disappeared, met a glorious dawn and flash fused to emerge as one woman search party. Maestra Maritza, I know this goes against all scientific wisdom, but I can't help but theorize that these 3 interstellar marvels you pulled into our orbit have become a new home for those that collapsed into the event horizon of imperial cruelty. I like to suppose that our gente were never erased, but rather beamed to a star system that does not regard them as merely tool or trinket, a galaxy where their dreams are as important as those who dwell in some imaginary north. Could it be, Maritza, that what you scoped out there among the shimmering allness was in fact a reunion pachanga thrown on the gold dust rings of a wandering star where discovery is not a sort of Damocles, but instead a feathered re-entry path for those who have been missing us?
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. And yes, that I would have tripped up on that word too. It's just not.
Sorry.
You're good. I was like, oh goodness. Yeah, I had to find the poem with the difficult words and the foreign language words. You did very well. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are on to our main presentation now. We have Dr. Kent Wallace. He is currently serves as Dean of Graduate Studies at Fisk University. Dr. Wallace also heads the physics program as discipline coordinator, chair of physics programs, where he serves as director of physics laboratories and coordinator of rocketry. In that capacity, he assumed responsibility for the modernization of instruction in all physics undergraduate laboratories and as well as laboratory curriculum. He has dedicated his career to the upward mobility of underserved populations in the area of math-intensive subjects matter and STEM-related curriculum. Dr. Wallace specializes in the development and implementation of engaging young and adult learners through STEM-related outreach programs, utilizing but not limited to physics, astronomy, rocketry, and robotics. Here is Dr. Kent Wallace.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Uh,
Well, I am so glad to be asked to be here today. and I was asked to speak with you on women in science. And particularly what I would focus on this time is space exploration. And I think it's only fitting that the poem that was given was of an astronomer who looked at exoplanets, and what those are planets that we've discovered that are not of our own solar system. And I think why there's such a broad appeal to astronomy is because we can all look up and we can all see these little points of light in the sky that are stars, some like our own, some bigger, some smaller. And so my talk is to talk about women in STEM, particularly the future of space exploration. So we can go to our next slide. So this first picture I think is iconic. These are 20 Black women that are in astronomy, astrophysics, physics, and physics education. One of the reasons I'm so excited by this picture is that we're all members of the National Society of Black Physicists. And when you think of astrophysicists and astronomers, typically we do not think of this image as, you know, people who fill these ranks. One of the women in that picture is Dr. Jedidah Eisler, who is now an assistant professor at Dartmouth. She did her master's here at Fisk University, and she went on to get a PhD in astrophysics from Yale, the first African-American woman to have done so. So as you can imagine, it's a pleasure to have had her come through our university. Next slide. This is someone who is actually local to Nashville. This is Dr. Kelly Holly Bockelman. She's a professor of astrophysics at Vanderbilt University. Her interests include gravitational waves, galaxy dynamics, and black holes. Now, why that is important is that when it's interesting that if you're going to talk about gravitational waves, which are ripples in the very fabric of space-time, if you talk about galaxy dynamics and you talk about black holes, you have to talk about all of them because they are all interrelated. Just in our galaxy, what we believe, and in the center of most galaxies, if not all, are supermassive black holes, which are basically the remnants of, you know, stars that have long since passed. Next slide. Now, this one you may or may not know about. This is Catherine Louise Bowman. Now, why this is significant, if you look at that little image that's on her screen, she was the woman who helped develop the code that gave us our first image of a black hole. Now, that's kind of significant considering, well, why are black holes black? Well, to see things, you would have to have light hit it and bounce off of it and then go into your eye. And because gravitational pulls of black holes are so strong, light can't escape them, so you can't see them. Hence, they give it the name black hole. Well, they came up with this experiment to use a number of telescopes to look at a given region, and those images had to have a code to put all of that together. And she developed that code. And what you are looking at is a picture right after the code ran and it worked, and you see the first image of that black hole. Next slide. Now, one might ask, who are these glamorous women? And, you know, this is an event, as you can tell, right over the shoulder, right over the heads of the two on the left. This is, you know, probably a government because you have somebody in an Air Force uniform or in her dress blues, formal. But you might think, who are they? What do they do? Well, as it turns out, next slide, they are all astronauts. The center one, it was Dr. Mae Jemison. You may or may not know, this was the first Black woman to go to outer space. And so she was actually a commencement speaker at Fisk University. It turned out in a completely unrelated event. My mom had met her with the Secretary of Education back when she was Deputy Chief of Chicago Public High Schools. I was like, aha, she came to my school too. You're not the only celebrity, Mom. Nevertheless, next slide. The other woman in the picture, Joan Higginbotham, another astronaut in the astronaut corps. Next slide. Stephanie Wilson, Next slide. And Yvonne Cagle. All astronauts in the astronaut corps. Some that have gone up and some that are in, waiting. There are quite a few astronauts, but not every astronaut gets to go up immediately. It's a long process of selecting which mission that you're chosen for. Next slide. Now, I bring this up, NASA Artemis program. Now, Artemis is the name of the Greek god, and it's of the hunt, of the wilderness, of the moon, and of chastity. And this is a fitting name for this particular rocket. It's actually massive. This is NASA's rocket that will take our next mission to the moon, right? And so in this mission, there are going to be some firsts that are historic because they never would have happened, say, in the first time that we have gone to the moon. There will be on this mission, 1 or 2 women will be on this mission, and a woman of color. There is a core of astronauts that are selected, and they have not decided which are, but I thought I would introduce you to a couple of those that are the women of those that may be selected. Next slide. Is that the next one, or did it accidentally advance? Okay, I think that's right. All right, so one of the candidates is Nicole Apalman, who is a Navy F-18 pilot. A lot of your astronaut corps that command missions come from the military. And what I also did not know until a friend of mine who was in the Air Force told me, for you to be selected to the astronaut corps, a lot of them come from the test pilot corps. So you may have flown active duty, but you also would have had to go to the test pilot corps because it heightens your chances. In fact, at the time, he told me if you didn't have that on your pedigree, then you weren't being selected. It wasn't explicitly written, but that was the inside information. Next slide. You have Kayla Jane Sachs, who is a submarine warfare officer. Now, you have to think about that for a second. Submarine warfare officer, that's a very specialized pedigree in itself. Depending on if you're on an SSBN or an SSN, those are SSBN are nuclear submarines that carry ballistic missiles, and the SSNs are the nuclear attack submarines that go hunting for other nuclear ballistic submarines. And so you're, submerged in a big, giant metal tube for sometimes months on end. So that takes a special kind of frame of mind. And when you think about it, every astronaut is a certified diver because they practice underwater. So just being in a submarine for long periods of time is pretty much akin to being in the International Space Station in the space capsule. So they lend themselves to each other. Next slide. You have Yasmin, if I want to say this right, Mogebi Bibi. She is in the Marine Corps, and she is an AH-1 Super Cobra pilot. That's an attack helicopter. Next. And Jessica Watkins, who is a geologist. And it would make sense that you would want maybe a geologist on the exploration of another planet, because we actually look at certain patterns on our planet, and it tells us about things that we see on other planets. Case in point, the Grand Canyon. It shows how over millions of years, water can erode to make these caverns and canyons. Well, there are many structures on the surface of Mars that share those same patterns. So geologists, are critical to the mission of space exploration in determining what possibly happened in the evolution of that given planet. Next slide. So these are my students. They are students of the rocket team. This is a few years ago. Some have gone on to medical school. Some have gotten their PhDs in biological research. One there is a physics major, the taller gentleman. And I think this kind of like rounds out this talk, because the day is gone that your traditional scientists are just white males. And we have a long way to go. I mean, I remember my first time at the American Physical Society Division of Plasma Physicists. I went to a conference, and it was myself, another graduate student, and my advisor. And I felt like a piece of pepper in a salt shaker. It was just that bad. when you sometimes look for community, but you also look for cultural identity, because what the research shows is that many people who have persistence in science, you have to have a strong sense of scientific identity. And one of the greatest factors in developing scientific identity is interacting and being mentored for those that share your same cultural, ethnic, gender backgrounds. So the more that we have in the pipeline, the more we will have in the pipeline. So I would hope that this gives you a little insight into the power that women bring to science and discovery. Those that sometimes, I have a saying that I use in my Facebook posts whenever I see someone who's the first to do something. If there has never been, you're just going to have to be the first. And so in our next mission to the moon, we may have our first person to step on another world, but this time it being a woman. And rightfully so, because we are all contributors to discovery of our universe. And all perspectives make it something that we can learn more, discover more, come up with new technologies and innovations. And with that, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak at this event. And I'll take any questions. I think, is this a moment for questions? I think I saw them in the chat. If there are, then I'd be happy to take any.
Felicia just asked Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars. The Empire would blow the Federation out of the universe.
Okay. What got you into science? Who was your inspiration point?
It's very interesting. I grew up with something that I now know is stereotype threat, and it's where a given demographic harbors the expectations or low expectations that are projected on a given group of people. I was terrible in math and science because I just thought math and science was something that, Black people didn't do. I didn't see any Black scientists when I watched Nova, which was the only science show that you could watch back in my day. Mm-hmm. And so I had this fear of math and science. But I remember when I got to college, I scored solo in math. I had to take a remedial math class. And I had this teacher, Miss Gamble. She was the typical image of what I would have thought of as a Southern belle. White lady with the poodle skirt, flaring, strong Southern accent. And I remember we were going over identities. Inequalities, like less than, greater than. Mm-hmm. And I was just sitting at the paper looking at it, frustrated because I just never understood them. And she said, Mr. Wallace, it's okay. All you have to do is remember that the alligator takes the biggest bite. And I was like,
yes, that's how I learned it too.
It was like an epiphany.
Yes.
It was a burden of my life taken off my shoulders that I understood this archaic symbol for the first time in my life. And that began the journey of realizing that the biggest inhibitor of me embracing math and science was my own perspective. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't an overnight process, but if it were not for her, I do not believe I would have gone on to where I am now. Another factor I would argue is not everything is positive. My advisor in physics suggested that he didn't think I was cut out to be a physicist. And he suggested I change my major to music since I was in the marching band. Devastating. And I was like, I'm not going to him for another class. Whatever. No. But here's the ironic part. Long story short, and it is a long story, I went on to get my master's from Fisk University. I graduated from Fisk University. I got a master's from there. I was hired by Fisk University as an instructor. I went on to become an assistant professor, head of the physics program, which we call discipline coordinators. It's equivalent to a department chair. And as of last month, appointed to Dean of Graduate Studies. Well, Fisk University was that advisor's alma mater. And so I just use that as a motivation that I'll tell to students, young and old. Yeah. The only person who can really determine your abilities is you. Yeah. And I don't care what authority they say. It just takes the chance of believing in yourself, putting in the work, and the possibilities are endless. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, we have another question is favorite rocket ship.
Wow. Real or fantasy?
They did not specify. So
Okay, I'll give you
one or both. Yes.
Okay. Real, I would have to say my favorite is the space shuttle. It's just, it didn't live up to what they thought it would, but if you didn't have it, we wouldn't have Hubble
Yeah.
in space, and we wouldn't have been able to repair it to give us the images that we have today. So I will say that being the first, the space
Okay.
shuttle. Fantasy, Imperial class Star Destroyer. If I just wanted to be in one of those movies and with a uniform on and just say, "Your shuttle is ready, Lord Vader." That was my dream. And then in the last movie, I finally saw a Black Imperial officer.
Yes.
And right after that, they blew up the entire fleet. I'm just like, it figures. So, oh well, but that would have been
that would have been awesome.
That would have been it.
Okay. George and Steven want to know if you're still playing music.
Am I still playing music? Yes.
Yes.
I play trombone and I play piano and I sing. I think I sing a little bit more often than anything else. I'm a part of the fraternity Phi Mu Alpha, which is a honorary fraternity of men of music. And I'm also the advisor at Fisk. So I try to be engaged in music as much as I can, but
Nice.
to be perfectly honest, ever since I became dean, I'm just trying to get sleep. So,
Yeah.
We'll work that out
Yes.
a little later.
Okay. And then one of the major current news stories involves the possible abandonment of an American astronaut by Russia due to sanctions. How much do you think that politics will influence the future of STEM?
Well, the one thing I've known historically is that science has tended to be separate and apart from politics. When we have had contentions with Russia before, we were still sending up our astronauts on Russian missions. It's this kind of microcosm, separate entity within it, but this has gotten kind of serious. And so there's a possibility they will say, well, we'll leave you up there stranded, but they're not really stranded, because we do have SpaceX and the Falcon series of rockets, and they have, if I remember correctly, they have docked supplies to the International Space Station, so they would be able to possibly bring our astronauts back on a SpaceX rocket, if I'm correct. So I think that this is a little saber rattling, to be honest, but the sciences tends to be a little bit a part of it, because I am sure they're up there in space talking to each other like, man, I wish they'd get it together down there.
Yeah. It's like, we can see you if you're, it's so tiny. Come on, you get it together. So Dr. Wallace, you spoke knowledgeably about the military's role as a pipeline for women and minorities in NASA. Do you see there is more equality in the opportunities from that military pipeline?
So if I have this understanding, can they get into that without going through the military? Oh yes, of course. That's just one pool, and plus those tend to be your mission commanders. Because hence with the space shuttle, it was an aircraft, and so hence that's kind of why it went that way. But no, you can apply to the astronaut corps today by going to the website. It is a traditional path. It's not the only path by any means. If you are a very good scientist, then you are just as capable of being in the astronaut corps as someone from the military. Yeah.
Yes, that pipeline was mainly because, World War II, they had so many dearth of test pilots from the military that kind of went the route, and women like Jamie Cobb and other women, the Mercury 13 was something else I read about, was, they didn't get it because you had all of these qualified men. Why are we going to choose?
Yes. But
this is sad.
But the interrelated of that whole era, we also have to go back to Hidden Figures. There were people that NASA would not be what it is without women. And so that's the backstory, but I think they're giving credit to that as we go forwards, be it that there may be a woman to be the first person to set foot on another world again. Okay. And what of our last question? Do you have any YouTube channel or TikTok we could see more of your talks? Yes. So I have 3 different YouTube channels. I have a science one called Science U. If you wanted to find it, I put in Science U, like YOU, and Bryan Kent Wallace. It'll get you to that. I have a channel where I do tutorials in solving physics problems. I believe that's just Bryan Kent Wallace. And if you put in Bryan Kent Wallace in physics, it'll take you to that. And then I have another YouTube channel where I'm a big aviation buff. I actually built a flight simulator in my office here at home. It's like right over there. Some people say that's why I'm not married, but but I post videos because I love to do flights and go through actual flight procedures of pilots. So I actually post videos on YouTube flying different aircraft. So those would be the three. And in the Science U, you'd actually see that I do some music videos where I do science parodies to get kids and adults excited about
Nice.
science.
Awesome. Okie dokie. Well, I think that is everything for our Q&A section. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. It was
Thank you
very
so much for
fun.
having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. And we've got, looks like our second Minty poll is going. This African-American woman received the illusion transmitter patent that provides what is referred to as a holographic image. I gave you some easy ones to get you all to the right answer, or maybe y'all just Googled, but you have the correct answer, Dr. Valerie Laverne Thomas. Congratulations, people. All right, and we are next moving on. We should have, oh shoot, where are we in the thing? I was so done. No, we should not be there yet. We should be on to a song. Totally Googled. Good job. I'm calling out Josh Brown. He totally Googled the answer to that question. All right, we're moving on to our moment of mindfulness so we can think of all these wonderful women going up into space and representing the whole of humanity. And then we will have a song. We'll be on to our trying my best this time will be rather special. Moving on.
And 3, 2, 1, thank you. Good morning. Even chemicals might find their perfect match. Just a little atom of chlorine, valence -1. Swimming through the sea, digging the scene, just having fun. She's not worried about the shape or size of her outside shell. It's fun to ionize just a little atom of Cl with an unfilled shell. Somewhere in that sea lurks handsome sodium with enough electrons in his outside shell, plus that extra one. Somewhere in this deep blue sea, there's a negative for my extra energy, yeah. Somewhere in this foam, my positive will find a home. Then unsuspecting chlorine felt a magnetic pull. She looked down and her outside shell was full. Sodium cried, "What a gas, be my bride, and I'll change your name from chlorine to chloride." Now the sea evaporates to make the clouds for the rain and snow, leaving her chemical compounds in the absence of H2O. But the crystals that wash up on the shore are happy ones. So if you never thought before, think of the love you eat with every salty treat. Oh, that's so sweet. No, salty.
No.
Both.
Who was? I forgot the lady's name that I found that YouTube thread. That was hilarious. Thank you so much. I was like, I found. I'm like, please tell me you can do this.
Yeah. It's an altered rendition, but yeah.
Yeah, it's still
Chemically altered.
chemically altered. There we go. All right, so that was our song, and we are moving on to our inspiring women. We have JoJo Lawrenson and Felisa Powers that are going to be sharing stories of women that inspired them in their lives.
Hey there, I'm JoJo. I'm going to be talking about a woman who inspired me from the time that I was young. Her name was Jeannie Moses, and sorry about that. Had my mic down. My name's JoJo, and I just embarrassed myself. I'll be talking about a woman who's inspired me for many years since I was a child. Her name was Jeannie Moses, and she taught me and inspired me throughout my childhood years and into my adulthood. She gave me the inspiration to be the pagan that I am today by telling me that she told me when I asked the church about why I decided to stop believing in fairies and dragons, and they said I just had to. She taught me that I didn't have to, and there was this thing called paganism that I could believe in, and she taught me all about it and inspired me on the road to it. And I've been on that road for 17 years now. And beyond that, she inspired me with her creativity every day. She was creating something, be it artwork or ceramics, or she would be painting the house, just painting the house, and she would be doing it in a creative way that inspired me to put paintbrush to canvas, even though I knew I sucked at it. She had a way of inspiring me to do something new and different every day. Later in life, when I was an adult, she unfortunately got cancer, and she fought it in such a way that you couldn't tell she had it. She was such a fighter and so inspiring to be so determined to fight it out and not let it get to her, not let it take her down. I wish I was half the woman that she was to me. So, yeah, she was like another mother to me, and that's about as inspiring as somebody can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, JoJo. Tiffany's behind you now if you need a hug.
I could probably use one.
Yeah. And next one, unfortunately, if Felicia starts crying on hers, I can't run to the same room that she's in. So I hope somebody's there for you, Felicia. We're about ready to hear about your abuela.
You're funny. It's all good. I got a dog here.
Good.
So yeah.
Yeah. I was whispering, Tiffany, go upstairs, go upstairs.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm really excited to tell you about my abuela. Ramona Marroquin was born on a farm in a small Texas border town. She grew up on the farm, helping with daily chores and learning the business of farming. She eventually ended up inheriting the farm from her parents when they passed, and she never really planned on leaving that very idyllic and fulfilling life in Elsa, Texas. She met and married my grandfather, and they began a family together. Within 7 years, they had welcomed 5 children into the world, and my dad was one of those 5. When my dad was 4 years old, his father suffered a widowmaker heart attack, they call them. And so very unexpectedly and suddenly, Ramona found herself a single mom of 5 children, all under the age of 7, while being the sole proprietor of a family farm. But she didn't give up. I mean, she could have. That outlook seems really bleak to me, difficult and challenging, but she kept at it. She eventually decided to sell the farm, and she moved up north to Chicago, where she had some extended family that could lift her up and support her with the kids, and she would have a community to depend on. She found a job in a factory, and she joined a local church. It was at that church that she met the man that I would grow up calling Huelo. She married him, and they had 6 more kids together. My dad's from a really big family. As her boys grew, she watched all but one of them join the military and serve in various conflicts. And it wasn't until we laid my uncle to rest at his military funeral that the gravity of that struck me. And she was so brave to send all of her babies, almost all of them, all at the same time, to go fight for our country. That stirs me deep inside. I'm so moved by the grace and resilience that she carried herself with throughout her life. And learning my abuela's story was, for me, a lesson in resilience. Through her example, she taught me how to keep going, even when I wanted to give up. She showed me that life isn't always easy, but it's always yours for the taking. And even when things seem impossible, we can choose to not give up. We can choose to keep going. We can choose to make changes in our life to find our happy ending. Even when the happy ending we thought we had is taken away in an instant. And it's really why I wanted to share her with you. She's the most remarkable and inspiring woman I think I've ever known in my entire life. I'm so honored to be her granddaughter. And I aspire to live up to her legacy. I'd like to think that maybe one day, if I'm lucky, maybe one of my descendants will get to tell their friends a similar story about me. share me the way that I've shared my grandmother with you.
Well, thank you, Felicia. That was beautiful. I'll go hug your dog. Okay, we have, as after all this, we have the housekeeping. We have our last poll. These are going to be organizations that we are going to donate to, or have a selection to donate to. So the first one, their Shades of Blue, is the second question we have. Valerie Laverne Thomas is involved with this organization. It's a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to mentoring, counseling, arranging internships, employment for young people who desire to pursue STEAM D++ careers. Their primary focus is on aviation and aerospace. The next one was UNICEF, if we would like to contribute to helping ramp efforts to meet critical and escalating needs for safe water, healthcare, and educational programs, providing vital humanitarian supplies, making sure that there's immediate help for children and families in need, especially right now with Ukraine. The other one was the Play Like a Girl. They're a 501c3 charitable organization. Their board is here in Nashville. They mission to level the playing field by leveraging the skills of girls gained from sport to propel young women into competitive male-dominated careers in STEM. So they are working with that. We have some announcements and acknowledgements. Again, whereas we can donate is because you're donating to us. If you would like to become a sustaining member like we are, set it and forget it, recurs every month. That just helps us, especially make a budget now that we may be getting back to in-person meetings and need a place to go. We are going to need to know what we've got in the kitty, as it were, to be able to get places to go to. So there's that. If you'd like to get involved, we are completely volunteer run. You can see some double names up here: production, Jason Pinks; music, Stephen Phelps; live better, Brenda Quinn; help often, Stephen Phelps; wonder more, Josh Brown; and a promo as Tom Kunis or Jason Pinks. If you would like to, if you do art, got art, any of our upcoming themes, we have reunion. In May, our guest speaker is going to be again Dave Warnock, because 2 years ago, our last speaker was Dave Warnock that we got to meet in person. So we're bringing him back for the next in person. It's like, yay, we've come full circle, hopefully. Contact that. And just in general, volunteer thanks for this past 2 years of craziness of having to be virtual and getting everything together and making sure that we are kept going. Special thanks to Jason Pinks, Clay, who's not here today, but everybody who's done the behind the scenes work. He does, Jason, so the second video of all of his screens that he's looking at right now to make sure everything's up and running. And it's just like, I can do that. We'd like to thank that. If you'd like to join us on social media, we have Facebook. We have two, Sunday Assembly Nashville. There's a secret Sunday Assembly Nashville. So if you are not in a safe place to where you can be out on Facebook in your social life, you can join the secret Sunday Assembly Nashville. We are on Instagram. We have a Twitter, and we have a new Discord, Sunday Assembly Nashville, that Gwen made for us. Thank you for that. Next one is April 10th, reunion party. Brenda, I get to hug you all. Looking back, we'll be at Stratford High School Auditorium. There'll be information on our Facebook and our meetups about where that'll be and what'll be going on. And my closing thoughts. Oh, joy. Just when I first heard, and thanks, and the volunteer thanks, I needed to give a special thanks to Felicia for finding Dr. Bryan Kent Wallace to speak for us today. I was so excited when I heard the theme, and I went, is he going to talk about Nichelle Nichols? It's like, well, it's women in STEM, not women of Star Trek. But just when it was the representation of women in STEM, I thought of her immediately, because the first story I remember was Whoopi Goldberg telling about running to see her mom and her grandma. Come look at the TV. There's a black lady on TV and she ain't no maid. And just seeing that person that looked like you, that was in a position that you had never thought you could be in before. And then later on, when Nichelle was thinking about quitting the show, and she's at where was she at? She was at a party, and someone said, "Oh, your biggest fan wants to meet you." And she's thinking, small child. She sees Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. walking toward her. "Yes, ma'am, I am your biggest fan." And she heard that he was going to leave the show. And he said, "You cannot leave. Don't you see that this man he has changed the face of television forever unless you leave." And he spoke about TV is the most powerful education. And this man has changed everyone's attitudes towards women and to people of color. You cannot leave. And so she stayed and then made her contribution that way. But then afterwards, 10 years after the show was canceled, NASA made a team. I'm looking at my notes to figure out what that was called, National Space Society. And she gave a speech that basically called NASA out, that military training pipeline was mainly just white males, and that's all they were getting. And she called them out. And so they invited her in and say, "Hey, work with us and help us make this better." And she's like, "If I do this and you don't change it, I will be your worst nightmare." And so she got there. She brought them the most qualified people on the planet. And they picked 5 women, 3 African-American men, and they picked a nation. And after that, the space program has represented everybody. And that's one of the things that she was most proud of. So that's my closing thought, my inspiring science woman today, who is inspiring others to pursue that. And we have our donations, and it looks like we just got edged out for Play Like a Girl. So women in sports and women in science. Yay. Oh, goodness. I'm in this wonderful demographic of the Let Me Play Sports commercial that's going through my head right now. And all the little girls that were on there, if you let me play sports, I can be this person. Okay, so that is where that will be going. And now I get to go and get ready for work. And all I want to do is watch Star Trek. But we have another song. Sing us on out, Stephen, in Georgia.
All right, here we go. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe in good. Oh, I believe in good. I believe in being good and doing good just for goodness sake. Good makes the whole world better. Good is great, and I believe in harmony. Respect for all humanity. I believe that we will find the only truth we need, living this one life by this one creed. I believe in good. I believe in good. I believe in good. I believe in good. I believe in being good and doing good just for goodness sake. Good makes the whole world better. Good is great, and I believe in harmony. Respect for all humanity. I believe that we will find the only truth we need, living this one life by this one creed. I believe in good. I believe in good. I believe in good. I believe